Gideon was a man like you and me. He lived in a time of fear. Enemies threatened his people. Gideon felt small and afraid. He hid from his problems. Can you relate to Gideon? He never imagined being a hero. Gideon saw himself as an ordinary man. He doubted his strength, he questioned his abilities, but God saw something special in Gideon. God saw a leader. God saw courage waiting to be awakened. God saw a hero in hiding. One day, an angel appeared to Gideon. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior," the angel said. Gideon was confused. "How can I be a warrior?" he asked. "I am weak and afraid," God reassured Gideon. "Go in the strength you have," God said. "I will be with you." Gideon took a step of faith. He listened to God's voice. He chose to believe even though he was afraid. Gideon asked God for a sign. He laid out a fleece of wool. "If the fleece is wet with dew but the ground is dry, I will know you are with me," he prayed. God answered Gideon's prayer. The next morning the fleece was wet, but the ground was dry. Gideon was still afraid. He asked God for another sign. This time, he asked for the opposite. He wanted the fleece to be dry, and the ground to be wet. Again, God answered. The next morning, the ground was wet, and the fleece was dry. Gideon's story is a reminder that God sees us not as we are but as we can be. He calls us to step out in faith, even when we are afraid. Gideon's courage inspired his people. With God's help, they faced their enemies. They experienced a mighty victory. We too can experience victory in our lives. We may face giants, but God is bigger. Let Gideon's story inspire you today. Listen for God's voice, step out in faith, and remember, with God, all things are possible.